So as part of that, you need to understand first what is Entra ID. Create, configure, and manage identities. In this, we'll be covering all of these topics, describe Entra ID concepts, and compare Entra ID to Active Directory domain services, implement self-service password reset, and configure self-service password reset. So all these topics we'll be looking at in our session. All right. So what is Microsoft Entra ID? Configure access application. Now, what is Entra ID? Does anyone know? We have in the fundamentals, I've explained you what exactly the Entra ID is.
It's Azure Active
Just
Directory.
Azure Active Directory.
That is not the answer to what is Entra ID. Azure Active Directory is another product or the service from Microsoft. Entra ID is the identity and access management service. That's the answer to what exactly Entra ID is, right? So Entra ID is basically identity and access management service by Microsoft. When you compare that with the on-prem deployments of the scenarios, on on-prem we have something called Active Directory services. So that's what Entra ID is. So in this we'll learn configuring access to applications, including single sign-on, manage and provision users and groups, providing an identity management solution, including federation. We'll see what federation is. And we can also implement the security features like multi-factor authentication and conditional access. Okay, so let me go to the whiteboard before we continue. It's important that you understand the difference between the Active Directory and the Entra ID. So once you understand that, we can run through the slides very quickly because you will have an idea what I'm talking about. If I just go to the slides first, then there'll be too many questions and doubts, which will be difficult to clarify. So I'm going to share the screen from my other machine. Here we have we are going to have a whiteboard session. And I hope the whiteboard is visible. If you're not able to see it, let me know.
Maksud, sorry to interrupt. I lost
Yes.
you in between. Like you told an entire idea or something definition.
Okay. The definition of Entra ID. I was asking you. You were there in the last sessions, right? I was actually asking what is Entra ID. So Entra ID is basically the identity and access management service from Microsoft, right? Wherein you can create create user accounts, groups, and manage access to the Azure resources. So that is what is Entra ID is. Okay, I'm sharing the whiteboard. Let me know if you're able to see or not. Based on that, we can start.
Yes, it's invisible.
Okay. All right. So let's compare Entra ID and understand what was there before Entra ID. So if you have worked on Active Directory and on-prem environments, right? Let's say this is our on-prem setup. So usually what you will have on-prem is the number of servers you will have. So what is this? You will have a domain controller, file server, your application servers, and so on. Okay, just an example. We're just trying to understand what is Active Directory first. And you will have the users, desktops or laptops, user one, user two. So in this environment, an on-prem environment, what is domain controller? It is nothing but a Windows server which has Active Directory installed on it, Active Directory domain services running on it. What is this? Active Directory domain services. It is nothing but an IAM service, you can say. On-prem IAM solution, identity and access management solution. So that's the built-in product of Microsoft. You don't have to buy or purchase this product. You can install on any Windows server. You can install an Active Directory domain services, and that server becomes a domain controller. The moment you install ADDS on it, it becomes a domain controller, right? That's the role of the domain controller. So domain controller will have an Active Directory domain services running on it, which provides an IAM service for on-prem users and computers and the applications. And with this, you will create something called domain, right? So domain is nothing but a logical boundary of your security in the infrastructure. So once you create the domain, for example, I create while you're installing the Active Directory, we will not go deep down in the Active Directory again because that will distract us from our topic today. So let's say, for example, I create a domain called abc.local. Now, not going deep again with the explanation. So this is my domain. So the moment you install the domain controller, the first domain controller, this will be part of this domain logically. And this domain, now what you can do is you can actually create users or groups. You can even create the computer accounts. You can join these machines to domain. So it doesn't really point to the domain controller as I'm pointing here. So it connects to the domain. So you can make this machine a part of domain. That means what you will have is you will have a centralized authentication service available in your infrastructure, wherein you can define, you can create the users. For example, this user accounts you can create on this AD on the Active Directory domain services, user one, user two. So this is an account. This is an account, user account. Similarly, you will have computer accounts created in a traditional in the on-prem domain scenarios. You will have devices or computers wherein it will create the accounts for computers as well. So this gives you the control over your infrastructure. You can you will know who is using what services, what resources, who is able to log into these machines which are there in your domain. So identity and access management. So identity, you are managing identities with the creation of user accounts, and access. Once you have the user accounts created, you have a file server. So if this file server has to be part of the same domain, then you can define the permissions on the file shares. For example, you have this is your server name and this is your file share. So you have your all companies data stored here. So with the help of Active Directory domain services, you are able to do identity and access management. So you are controlling who can log into your systems in your domain in your organization computers, and here you're defining who can access those resources. So there are two things, right? You're managing the identities and you're managing the access. So that's why uh, you can safely call your Active Directory domain services as an identity and access management solution, on-prem solution, right? Now, how does this function? There are different authentication mechanisms here. In on-prem Active Directory, you have something called Kerberos and NTLM. Sorry, my writing is very bad on this screen because I can't really write properly here. Kerberos and the NTLM are the authentication protocols. Authentication protocols, which your Active Directory supports. So these are the authentication protocols which are used for authenticating users and authorizing the user's access. So far, is it clear? Has anyone worked on Active Directory environment? I guess most of you have worked on it. You know what is Active Directory, what is domain, and what is the user account, computer accounts, and so on. And the purpose is the authentication protocol. Right now, yes. Anyone has a
So
question?
yes, I have.
Yes.
So Microsoft Entra ID is like IAM.
Yes, we are coming to that.
So
I'm just
PM,
explaining you what was there, what is there when you compare Entra ID to the on-prem. This is what an Active Directory Domain Services does. So the similar role in the functionality Entra ID is doing on cloud platform.
yes, I get that. I get.
Yes. So what is
So
hmm.
PM, then PM, what is PM?
What is P?
AM, PAN.
PAM, we'll talk
PAN.
about that. I'll
Okay,
we have it covered in the next slides. Okay.
okay.
So this is the fundamental which you have to understand about the authentication and authorization. PM is a PAM solution, privileged access management, which are built on top of Active Directory services. So it's not something which you can straight away install and start using it. So there are dependencies for PAM, and we'll see what is PAM and what is PIM. There are two different uh, again naming convention here. The terminology, there's a identity management and there's a privilege access management, and both are different and both serves different purpose. All right. So I hope you're clear with the domain controller, Active Directory domain services, and what is the authentication protocol it uses. Now comes to we come to the Entra ID. Entra ID. Earlier, the Entra ID was called Azure Active Directory Services. So since with that name, you can really understand that both are the same services or similar services, but it was confusing. The naming convention, the terminologies were creating a lot of confusion. So, and there are other reasons as well. When Microsoft has renamed this service, the Cloud Identity and Access Management Service, to Entra ID. So Entra ID is nothing but an identity and access management service on Azure. Okay, that's what Entra ID is. Now, why do you need Entra ID? Okay, understand. You have created the Azure account, right? You create it for your labs. When you subscribe, you first create the Azure account, and then you create the subscription. You subscribe for the Azure services. What happens in the background is when you do this on your Azure platform, there are few items which are created automatically on the Azure portal. You will have something called management group, which is created automatically. Okay, we have seen what is management group, and we'll be seeing that later as well, because it is explained in more detail in admin and design part. You use it also creates something called subscription, and remember, subscription is nothing but it's a billing boundary. It's mainly a billing boundary. So whatever you do under this subscription, you either you create the virtual machines, create the storage, and so on. All the Azure resources are built to your subscription. So it creates a subscription, and along with the subscription, it also creates in the background and Entra ID, Entra ID tenant. Now, if you have logged into your Azure accounts, you can quickly look into that and check. I'll show you from my machine. So this Entra ID is tenant is automatically created for every subscription on the cloud on the Azure platform. Or even if you are using Microsoft Azure, other Microsoft SaaS services, for example, Microsoft 365, then also it creates the tenant for you on Entra ID. So it's like an Active Directory for you on Azure. Sorry, let's Azure portal. It's not .com. right? I hope you are able to see my screen where I'm logging in. It's on a different screen now. So let me log into this, my account. You can follow the same thing and check on your side as well. So when you look for Entra ID, it shows you this symbol here. So this is nothing but an Active Directory tenant created for you. Directory, you can say default directory. It shows you as default directory created on your subscription. So every subscription will have this Entra ID created automatically. And through this only you can actually create and manage the users and access to the resources on Azure. Okay, I have multiple tenants created here. This is my default tenant, Microsoft Entra tenant, and you can see it. You can actually manage this Entra ID. You can create the resources. We'll see how to create the users and groups in the later sessions. And today we'll have that activity. So I'm trying to show you that the Entra ID is automatically created. The tenant is created for you the moment you subscribe for any Microsoft or Microsoft Azure, Microsoft 365, or any other Microsoft services which you subscribe for. All right, let's go back to the whiteboard. So what you can do with the Entra ID, you can control access to your resources. So if it is just the IaaS service which you have taken from cloud, from Azure Infrastructure as a Service, you know what you can do with this, right? You can create the virtual machines, you can create your virtual networks, and you can create your app services and so on. We'll see all different kind of resources what you can create on Azure infrastructure. So that's your complete infrastructure. That's like your data center. Now, it is very important that you control access to those resources, right? So I've given you example before. If it is an enterprise uh, organization, they will always have segregation of duties. They will have system admins who takes care of the servers and related components. If you have application admins, they will be morely focused on managing the applications, and you might be having network admins who takes care of the network underlying network infrastructure. So you can have the same thing. Now, how do you do that? So with the help of Entra ID, because Entra ID is created automatically the moment you have the subscription, here you can create your user accounts. So you can say user one, user two, user three. This is you can assign this user permission to create the virtual machines or manage virtual machines. This one will be managing the applications. This one will be managing the network. So with the help of Entra ID, you can do that. So you can create identities, user one, user two, user three. That's a user account, and it is also considered as an identity. And these are your resources, and you can control access to these resources. You can provide access to specific resources on your infrastructure, on the cloud infrastructure. So that's all done with the help of Entra ID. Now, who takes care of this Entra ID? The health of this Entra ID, since you know this is it plays a very critical role now for managing access to all your resources. So this is all done by Microsoft. You don't have to worry about anything on managing the Entra ID services. Whereas if it is your own on-prem scenario, you have a domain controller and you have to take care of this because this plays a very important role. You can call it as the heart of your network because everything is managed and controlled through domain controller. What all you can manage, you can even enforce the group policy. You have something called group policies also, right? In AD, you have group policy objects, GPOs. You have organizational units wherein you can. This is nothing but a container kind of concept wherein you can organize your users and computers. and you can assign the good policies based on that. So all of this fits is basically part of your on-prem Active Directory. So your domain controller,
Maksud
you
bhai,
add,
just
yes,
sorry to interrupt. I just have some doubts.
yes,
In the on-prem AD, we were able to create a private domain, but
yes.
in Azure, it's only public domain, correct?
Yeah, when you create these subscriptions, when you subscribe, it creates a public domain, but with the custom name.
But again, still, we need to have a DNS hosting
You don't
to
have to. So
get.
see, with this, I'll show you. Uh, we'll see that in the lab. I'll show you the domain, what domain it creates. So Microsoft takes care of this.
Mhm.
It's not exactly the Active Directory domain. You can't really do a apple to apple comparison here.
Mhm.
There are some differences. There are some limitations on Entra ID when it comes to Entra ID. We'll see that in the next sessions.
Okay,
I hope that will actually clarify your question and doubt.
fine.
Okay. So let's carry on with this. So this is what is Entra ID is. This is what you can do with the Entra ID, and a lot actually, not just this. This is a very brief introduction I've given you on whiteboard so that we uh, everyone knows what we are discussing here. So I'm going to share the screen now again from the other side, other machine. I'm using two different machines, one for presentation, one for whiteboarding. That's because of the limitation of my machine where I have the whiteboard running. All right, so back to the presentations. Where were we? We were here, I think. Yeah. So now I hope you can answer when someone asks you what is Entra ID. Entra ID is nothing but an identity and access management service provided by Microsoft. Okay. So now you need to understand different concepts in Entra ID which are related to Entra ID. There's something called identity. An identity is nothing but you can call it as a user, device, or application, an object that can be authenticated. And if you see it clearly explains you what exactly it is. It has valid credentials, and the credential can be a password or a certificate, right? Did anyone use certificate as an application mechanism? You will see that in the labs going forward. So an identity can be a user account, it can be a device, or it can be an application. So in our explanation in the whiteboard, we have seen in on-prem scenario, we have seen that we can create the user accounts on the Active Directory domain services. We can create a device as well, and both of these will have identity created in Active Directory. So you can these objects can authenticate to the Active Directory domain services in order to access these services. And for accessing that, they can provide the credential, a password. If it is a user, it will be usually a password, and if it is a computer, it will be a certificate authentication. Right? An account. What is the account? Difference between the identity and account here. It is an identity with the information linked to it. So, for example, when we create the user, we call it a user account. On Active Directory, we create a user account, and if it is a computer, we call it a computer account. So that account, that object will have some information related to it. For example, username, password, profile, roles, and permissions. So you can assign permissions, roles, and different information you can associate with the account. Enter ID account, and again, you first understand what is identity account, and then enter ID account, and an identity created through enter ID or any other Microsoft Cloud service. Why it says any other Microsoft Cloud service? Because when you're taking the Microsoft 365 subscription, basically, you're creating an account again on that subscription, which is basically created in the background in Entra ID itself. Now, what is tenant and directory? These names are interchangeably used on Azure platform. We have seen that just now on portal. When you have the subscription created, it creates a Active Directory Entra ID tenant for you, which is also called as a directory. A dedicated and trusted instance, a tenant is automatically created when your organization signs up for a Microsoft Cloud Service subscription. Additional instances can be created. We'll have to know what are the use cases of that. We'll see that later. Entra ID is the underlying product providing the identity service. It's actually providing identity and access management service, both. The term tenant means a single instance representing a single organization. And we know that a tenant is Microsoft is a multi-tenant cloud service. So every organization will have its own tenant created automatically. Okay, that's what it explains here. Azure subscriptions used to pay for your Azure cloud services. We know that already. Now, differences between the Entra ID and domain services. If you look at the concept, both the Active Directory domain services as well as Entra ID, they are both providing the similar service, identity and access management service, wherein it is authenticating the users and granting access to the resources which are authorized to access for those particular users. Now, the major differences between these two, and you can also refer to the icons here. These are specific. Microsoft refers to their services with the specific icons, and they sometimes change as well. So this is the Entra ID icon, and this is the Active Directory icon. Actually, it was Azure Active Directory icon, not the entire Active Directory icon. So it's primarily identity solution queried using REST API or HTTP and HTTPS. So this is the major difference now here. We are talking about between Active Directory domain services and the Entra ID. Uses HTTP and HTTPS protocol for this is for access, and then it uses something called SAML, WS Federation, and OpenID Connect for authentication and auth for authorization. So the protocols, the underlying protocols for these technologies changes. When you compare on-prem, we use Active Directory use something called Kerberos as authentication protocol, and here it is using a different authentication protocol, which is SAML and different WS Federation, which was a previous version of. You can say this was used in early days of cloud services. Now nobody uses this. Includes federation services. We'll know what is federation service and many third-party services such as Facebook. We'll see that in the whiteboard explanation. Microsoft Entra ID users and groups are created in a flat structure, and there are no organizational units and group policies. This is These are key differences which you have to remember for even for your exam, and even for the practical usage of Active Directory Entra ID services. So Entra ID is a flat structure wherein there is no concept of organization units and group policies, and it uses different authentication protocols. Right? We'll see how it works. So if I go to the whiteboard again, I've already explained it. I'll just emphasize what I'm referring to in the slide. Can you see the whiteboard? So we have seen these two scenarios, right? We have Active Directory domain services, and we know that in the on-prem environment, it uses the authentication protocol called Kerberos. So this is within the network we're talking about, and there's something called group policies and organization units. What does the organization unit do? So let's say if you have a large organization, you can create OUs. These are called organization units. These are nothing but containers to organize your users based on the site. You can do it based on site or based on departments. So it's all up to you how you manage. You want to manage this. So users, OU can contain users. It can contain groups. It can contain the computer accounts, which you call it as devices. And you can apply the group policies on each OU. No, what is group policy? You can there are set of policies which you can enforce on users, groups, and devices. So you will have to do some research on that. What exactly the group policy does is basically to manage. By the name itself, you know that it's a policy kind of policy which you can enforce on the organization units, on the users and groups and devices. So that's the on-prem Active Directory. Now, when it comes to the Entra ID, you don't have this concept. You don't have a group policy. You don't have OUs. Can anyone tell
Uh,
me an example of a group policy? What you can
that
use the group policy for?
I unable to download anything, I believe.
Sorry,
Unable to download anything, like cannot copy paste anything from the Outlook.
that's not the group policy.
Ma'am, that is that
That is the
ma'am
DLP.
policy.
That is
Yeah,
the DLP
DLP.
A
protection.
policy based to a group, either it
Yeah.
can be an OU or a group of users or computers, on
Hmm.
what security measures that we need to publish.
Yeah. One example of a group policy.
Like anything like
Password, password,
ports are
password
blocking,
exploration.
we can.
Yes, you can set a password policy. Password policy, you can enforce the password, requirement for your users. You can also enforce the what do you say? You can enforce the environmental controls on the users. For example, users should not be able to change their desktop background. This is just one single example. You can control any action which a user can perform on their machines with the help of group policy. It's a very powerful tool in Active Directory domain services, and it gives you a very granular control on the users. Whatever restriction you want to apply to the user, whatever policy you want to enforce, you can do that. So that group policy is very powerful and helpful in Active Directory domain services, and that is not there in Entra ID. So we don't have a concept of group policies. We don't have a concept of organizational units, right? So we'll see how we can organize users in Entra ID in order to easily manage. Why do you do the OUs? This is for easy administration of the users, and you can have different set of group policies for each OU. You can deploy the group policies based on the OUs as well. So you can divide the users. If it is, let's say you have 1,000 user base infrastructure, you will have 1,000 user accounts created on your Active Directory, right? Now, managing those users within this one particular default, there's a default users container created the moment you create the Active Directory, install the Active Directory. Now, this user base you can divide in different groups based on the departments or different sites. If your company is having different locations, you can create the OU organization units, and you can put those users in particular OUs and apply the different set of group policies. So that's what the presentation was explaining. The key differences that the on-prem Active Directory uses Kerberos. This is one of the key difference. Kerberos has an authentication protocol. It uses group policies. Another distinction between Active Directory domain services and Entra ID, and it uses OU structure for organizing the objects in Active Directory. In Entra ID, you don't have any of those three. For authentication, what does it use? For example, in Entra ID, if it is purely a cloud service which you are using, not the hybrid, only the public cloud service, your user will be somewhere in the internet, right? This is your user. Now, how does this user connect to your platform, Azure platform? He connects with the help of browser, right? It can be a browser or any other utility which you can use, which we will see later. You can use the CLI utility. You can use some other products as well to access your Azure platform. So this access happens over HTTP protocol or HTTPS. It's mostly HTTPS to make it secure. Connectivity will be secure. So this is the protocol it uses to access the service, and then once it accesses the service, it will use the protocol called what is the SAML for authentication. So what is SAML replacing here in on-prem Active Directory? When you compare it with the on-prem Active Directory, this is the authentication protocol which is used here, and we don't have this structure. The third, you don't have the structure in the OU structure in Entra ID. It's a flat structure entirely. You will understand this more when we move forward. For now, I just want you to understand this key differences. When the user is in on-prem, when it needs to authenticate to the Active Directory domain services, it uses something called Kerberos as authentication protocol. And when it is a cloud user, the access method is basically HTTP over HTTP or HTTPS protocol. Authentication protocol it uses as SAML. It's SAML basically. It's not SAMS. Okay, let's carry on. All right, so we were here. Now here you have some more explanation. Microsoft Entra ID versus Active Directory Domain Services. ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services, is nothing but on-premises directory for managing computers, users, and groups in the local network. That's really important to understand. Entra ID is a cloud-based identity service for managing users' apps and access in Microsoft 365 and other SaaS apps. So Entra ID is the backend service, the authentication service for all the cloud services, not just the SaaS services. Even if you have just the Azure infrastructure as a service, in the background, it's Entra ID, which is authenticating your users. ADDS uses Kerberos and TLM for authentication. Entra ID is OAuth, SAML, and OpenID Connect. There are different authentication protocols available. Again, those are open source, open platforms are the authentication mechanisms which are used by not just Microsoft. If you again compare this on Active Directory, Kerberos is used particularly for Microsoft authentication services. ADDS manages domain joined Windows devices. Entra ID manages cloud joined or hybrid devices. So the way you join your computers in on-prem Active Directory to your domain, similarly, your user accounts, your machines, your computer accounts, the computers which are used by your users who are connecting to Entra ID, you can enroll those devices in Entra ID as well for managing those devices as well. We'll again see that in the practicals and more on the whiteboard. Entra ID supports SSO and conditional access, okay, across cloud apps globally. ADDS is limited to on-prem. So these are limitations which you need to understand. Then you can actually uh, map these services to your requirement. If you have a specific requirement, authentication, identity, and access management requirement, you can relate both and see which one fits in where. Microsoft Entra ID plans. Microsoft is offering different plans for Entra ID. And what does the plan mean? The plan means the features. The more features you take from Entra ID, the more it will be, the more you'll have to pay for it. So there is a free Entra ID plan, which you know that the moment you have any cloud service from Microsoft, it is created automatically for you, and it's in function in the background. Single sign-on, you don't need any extra license for that. Cloud and Federation authentication, we'll see what it is, but you have the feature activated. Advanced group management is not there in the free tenant. Now, advanced group management in Entra ID is nothing but dynamic users. You can have different conditions and policies applied using the dynamic groups. We'll see how it works. Advanced group management. Self-service account management. Yes, in the free tenant Entra ID plan, you get the self-service management as well. Self-service is nothing but like you do these days. If you forget the password, username or the password on any cloud service, whether it is a Gmail, Google service, or anything which you name on the internet. So you can do your self password recovery, right? That's what Entra ID also provides here. So whether you forgot your username or password, you can still reset it by yourself. Multi-factor authentication, that's again a free service because every vendor on the internet, they provide MFA by default with all the services. That is to enhance your and make your authentication stronger. Then as you go by the plan, you have additional services. There's a conditional access, which is available in P1 and P2 both. We'll see what the conditional access is in the later slides. Risk-based conditional access, sign-in risk, user risk. Again, that feature is only available in P2. Automated users group provisioning to apps, available only in P1 and P2. And then Entra Suite. You also have suite of licenses where you get all the features. Privilege access management. You can see here privilege identity management, which is called PIN. It's available only in these two licensing mode. Advanced identity governance is available only in Entra Suite. So we'll see each of this feature. Now,
So, Bhai,
yes,
I have one question. Can I?
go ahead.
So in market we have like two tools. One is SailPoint and Ping ID.
Mhm.
So they are like I'm just wanted to know like the difference, the main difference of these two, the
Yes,
identity related and access related.
yes, we'll see that
If
going
okay,
forward. Okay, what is self-service password reset? Uh, you can determine who can use self-service password reset. You can do that. You can actually activate it based on the users, specific users, or you can do it on the complete Entra ID. Choose the number of authentication methods required. So for authentication methods, you can set email, phone, questions for resetting the password. Whether you should know the email address of the user, phone number, or the questions. You will have the security questions. You can require users to register for SSPR, self-sign password reset, same process as MFA. So you can request users, you can enforce users to do this. So this, what exactly this does, this reduces the load on your help desk. The self-service is particularly made for that purpose, for your, if you're having a large organizations, if a user forgets the password, the usual process is that they have to call the help desk of your organization and they request for the password reset. And then there are again the security concerns. It might be someone else, someone who's requesting the password reset, not the actual user. So with the help of this service, self-service, you take care of those both the issues. One is the unnecessary calls on the help desk for resetting the passwords, and the second one is the security, wherein here you are defining clear instructions, clear requirement, who can, when the user tries to reset the password, how you make sure that it is the correct user who is doing it. So you have multiple controls here available. Create user accounts. We will see how to create the user accounts on Entra ID. You can see, uh, all users must have an account. So every user who wants to access the Azure platform, in our scenarios, in our discussions, in our course, we are talking about Azure infrastructure as service mainly. So in order to access the Azure infrastructure, there has to be a user account created for that user, which he can use to authenticate to the Azure platform and access the services or the resources which are the account is used for authentication and authorization. So authentication is the first process wherein user is authenticated, identified, and then authorization is the level of access the user will have and which resource he can access. Each user account has additional properties. Manage user accounts. Now, who can manage the user accounts which are created on Azure Entra ID? You must be a global administrator or user administrator to manage the users. So there are different roles you can assign on the Azure platform. So as you have seen, I told you, you can have different set of user groups, right? For example, you have system admins who will manage only the virtual machines. You have network admins who will manage the network on the Azure platform, and so on. Similarly, you have user administration. So if it is a big network, it's a big environment, and the organization, if you have 1,000+ users, and you can delegate the control to specific users in a very simple scenario. Your help desk users who takes the first level calls from the users, you can assign them the user role to manage the users. User profiles are nothing but the photo of the user, job, contact information, and this is all optional when you're creating the user. Deleted users can be restored for 30 days. Why this information is important? This is for mainly put here for the examination. So you might get a question around this as well. Sign in and audit log information is available. So all the authentication, which user logged in, when and what he accessed, who, when, what, and when. Exactly. You can answer all those questions. Who accessed the resource? Uh, what exactly they access in the Azure platform? And when you'll have a timestamp, and from where they access the resources. You can also see from which IP they have accessed it. Create group accounts. You can also create the groups, security groups, and Microsoft 365 groups. So there are different kind of groups you can create on Entra ID, and memberships you can assign manually. You can add users to the group, or there is a dynamic assignment as well for users as well as for devices. Assign license to users and groups. Azure is a cloud service that provides many built-in services for free. You can see here again, it says Microsoft Entra ID comes as a free service. Gain additional functionality with P1 or P2 licenses. Additional services like Office 365 are paid cloud services. What is the Office 365, right? It's now being replaced with something called Microsoft 365. So it's going to be more and more products in one umbrella. Microsoft paid cloud services require licenses. Licenses are assigned to those who need access to the service. So again, it's a hard, actually, you can say Entra ID is the heart of your cloud services. So all the access and identity and access you're managing through Entra ID. So whatever service user needs on the cloud, whether it is an infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. So if you are using Microsoft 365 software as a service, you need a user to have a access to SharePoint site, or you need a user to have OneDrive, or any service which is provided under the Microsoft 365 services portfolio, email services. So you can assign every service requires a license. So it's not like you created a user account in Entra ID and that user will have access to all the services. It's not at all that way. For every service, you need to buy the license. You need to pay for the service, and then you can utilize. There will be licenses assigned per user, and you can assign those licenses to specific user accounts. Now, when you're configuring your authentication and authorization solution, designing your solution, you have to remember that these are the factors which you need to keep in mind. There are the different conditions. We'll see that for designing. Follow the zero trust model. Never trust, always verify. That means you can implement different conditions. This is the user and the device, right? So you can we have seen in the previous slides what are the conditions you can provide, implement. You can put in place here. For example, for the device, you can put some conditions. What conditions we have seen in previous slides? Does anyone remember? You can put a condition as a location, saying that a user or your user, whichever user you're talking about, you can put it on a specific user level or a group level, that this user can log in to Entra ID or access my cloud services only from the specific location. And that location goes by the geographical location, basically, right? So India, China, and so on. And you can define the condition that the MFA has to be activated. So controls, you can put the controls in here. There are different conditions. You can put different controls. What do you want to do? Allow or block access, limit access, require MFA. You can make sure that every user uses the multi-factor authentication, and force password reset. If based on the information, if the user password is compromised, you can force users to reset the password. Now, how is that done? Who decides that? That's all built in with the help of AI, which is running in the background on Microsoft Entra ID platform. So you can force the users if Entra ID identifies that the user password is compromised, if the password of that user is leaked and it's available over the web or on the dark web, it can inform the administrator, and you can implement the policy in advance, or you can have this policy enforced that user must change the password because the user password is already compromised, and in order to access the service, he must change it. Block legacy authentication. You can block the legacy authentication, all authentication protocols which are not secure and supported anymore in the latest platforms. What is identity and access management? Again, we have come to this for a quick overview. If you need this, use this. So now there's a comparison, there's a mapping here of Entra ID services. Now Entra ID provide identity and access management for employees in the cloud or hybrid environment. So if you have this environment wherein you have your own cloud services, and even if you have a hybrid environment, you can make use of Microsoft Entra ID. Collaborate with users, guest users, and external business partners like suppliers and vendors. So in Entra ID, you have a concept of B2B. What does B2B means? Business to business. This is what it is in Entra ID terminology. So I'll explain you where we use it and how we can utilize it. Control how, there's a third scenario, control how customers sign up, sign in, and manage their profiles when they use your application. So there's a Azure AD business to consumer B2C as well. So there are two things. Microsoft Entra ID, Microsoft Entra B2B. I don't know why they still use the name Azure AD business to consumer. It is again still Entra B2C. So Entra ID, Entra B2B, Entra B2C. We'll see the scenarios of this. We know now Microsoft Entra ID is a cloud-based solution for identity and access management. Entra ID is a multi-tenant, cloud-based directory and identity management service. Centralized identity management, use Microsoft Entra Connect Sync or Entra Cloud Sync. Now, this requires us to go back to the whiteboard, what we are talking about, so that you understand what exactly these terms are. Okay, I'm back to the whiteboard, and I hope you can see this. So let's talk about Entra ID. Okay, we have Entra ID. Now this can provide authentication to your cloud users. We are talking about particularly cloud, only the cloud. This is your cloud service authentic identity IAM service, wherein you have your users created here, and you have your proofs, you have your devices. Now, when do you use B2B, B2B, and B2C? B2B is nothing but business to business. This is business to consumer. For example, there's another company, and they also have their Entra ID, right? And you have a business relation between these two companies. Now, in order to explain this, I'll do one thing. I'll go back to on-prem scenario before coming to B2B and B2C. If you have worked with Active Directory, and in Active Directory, there was a concept of trust relationship. Does anyone know what is trust relationship? Trust relation. And there are different ways of trust relationship you can do. Two-way trust, one-way trust. These are, I'm just explaining you the high level. I'm not going again deep down on these concepts. So let's say you have two different companies, two different organizations. with their on-prem setups. Okay, they have their domain controllers, which is running the Active Directory Domain Services, ADDS, ADDS. And they have their application server and the file server. You know the function and the role of application server and the file server. And there are users, desktop users or laptop users, whatever it is. Okay, so these users are created here, U1, U2, and this AD also has users called, let's say B1, B2. I'm just giving an example. So my users here on these machines, they will be authenticated with the Active Directory, and if they have access to a specific file share, they will be able to access that file share. So there's authentication, which happens here, and this is access. They access specific service, and they can even have access to a specific application, which is running here. It can be a web application or whatever you name it. This is my traditional one setup, particular setup. This is one particular organization. Let's say this is ABC Corporation, and this is XYZ. Now, these businesses share some common interest. Okay, they want to share their resources, their application, their data. How do you do this in on-prem scenario? This ABC has their own Active Directory infrastructure, their domain controller, there's a file server, application server, everything. And similarly, the other organizations also having their own setup. Now, first of all, now there are two ways of doing it. Now, whether ABC wants to access the resources of XYZ or vice versa, or both ways. So this really depends on the business requirement. So that defines who needs to give permission to what. So either you can do a one-way trust. There's something called trust relationship, and that is done between the domain controllers. A trust is established between domain controllers. So this trust can be a one-way trust, or it can be a two-way trust. One-way trust means, for example, in this scenario, in one way, ABC domain, ABC Corporation, they want to allow access to their resources for XYZ. So what they can do is they are trusting the XYZ Corporation to access the resources. So in this case, your Active Directory has to be set up in such a way that it trusts the domain controller of the domain in XYZ Corporation. And once you do that, now how is that possible? Going back to the basics, you definitely have to make sure that you have a connectivity between the sites. You have your connectivity, whether it is a LAN connection or WAN connection or satellite connection, no matter what you use. If these are physically separate buildings and domains, you'll have a WAN connectivity. If they are in the same domain, you can even use your LAN connectivity to extend the network and make sure that this domain controller can access this or this domain controller can access this, right? So with this, with the help of connectivity in place, with having physical connectivity, everything is there. Then you can do the trust relationship on Active Directory level. Either it can be a one-way trust, wherein ABC trust XYZ. So in ABC domain, you can actually see user B1, B1 and B2 users, which are actually created here. The actual user accounts are created here. But since you have established a trust, you can see those users here in your Active Directory, and then you can assign permissions to those users on your resources, whether it is a file server or application server. So this is one-way trust. And when you do two-way trust, When it turns to two-way trust, if you want to access application, share application in both direction, both the companies have two different application sets which they want to share. So this is a business relation. It really comes down to the business relation, what business relation you have with the other company, and what level of access your businesses, agree upon. So it really comes down to that. It's not something which an IT administrator can decide that, okay, I want to give access to these users in that particular organization or the domain. So it is again a business which decides what level of access you want to give and what you want to share with other companies. So there comes if both want to share the resources with each other, you will do something called a two-way trust. Okay, between the domain controllers, you will establish a two-way trust. So the similar concept applies on Entra ID. When it comes to Entra ID, when you talk about B2C, it's nothing but a trust relationship between two different companies. So let's take the same example. Let's say this is my ABC corporation and this is my XYZ. So you can establish a business to business communication. Since both the services, both are having the cloud presence, both are in Entra ID, you don't need to do any physical, you don't need to worry about the physical connectivity between these two different Entra IDs. You just have to follow the process, the documented process, how you can provide access, establish this B2B connectivity, and then provide access to the resources in each other's cloud. That's business to business. Now, what is business to consumer or the customer? Now, this is very common in sense. For example, this is my company abc.com, and I'm hosting a application which is very famous. For example, ABC app, and this app is used by hundreds and thousands of users. And this is public app now. You're running this app. You're charging. You're actually uh, providing a paid service or the free service. It really is up to you what level of service you provide, whether it is paid or free. Now, this you made it for public. This app is made for public. Now we see this. This is very common. We can download an app from App Store, whether it is a Google App Store or Apple Store. You can use that app. You can every app requires you to authenticate, right? So this is an app, ABC app, and to this app you have to log in. Either you create account, isn't it? This is very common nowadays. Everyone knows it. Everyone is using it. Or you can use your Gmail account. I'm just giving one example, right? When you download an app from the internet, you get an option. Either you use or create an independent account on this ABC application to access this resource or the service, or you can use your Gmail account. What does it mean? That means the ABC Corp is having a connection to Gmail. They have a connectivity to Gmail. They have wherein they can authenticate you with your Gmail account. Okay, this is a business to customer Entra ID concept. So you can, instead of creating, now when you create the accounts, for example, if you go with this option, for every user who registered and access your app, there will be a user account created here, right? On your Entra ID, there'll be thousands and thousands of users created, and you'll have to manage and maintain those users. Whereas in B2C concept, what you're doing is you're relying on the third-party identity services. You're not creating the accounts for every user. You're authenticating them using their existing accounts, which are there on Gmail service, and providing access to your application. So these are the two different concepts in Entra ID. The B2B you can relate to the on-prem trust relationship, two-way trust between the businesses, and this was not there in AD concept and on-prem concept. this was limited. You because your AD is not exposed to internet, right? It's local on your network, so you could not really do with this with the AD the B2C concept. Is that clear? Anyone have any doubt here? I've tried to explain you what is B2B and B2C. You have some labs, you can see that, and it will make it more clear. If no doubt, we'll continue. I hope it is clear. And when you do the labs, it will be definitely much more clear what you've seen now. Since it's very common, this B2C is a common scenario. I'm sure everyone uses the applications when they are downloading applications. If it is a application where you have to register yourself, you have to create an account, or you can use your existing accounts.
Maksud bhai, I just have
Yes.
one question.
Yes.
If we are in the on-prem
Hmm.
and with multiple domains,
Yeah.
two-way trust,
Mm-hmm.
and if we are going with synchronization with Entra ID,
Right.
is it one domain
I'm coming
sync
to
is
that.
enough?
I'm okay. I will come to that now. That was the next thing we'll discuss, because here we are not covering and the AD sync. Here we are discussing two different scenarios. One was on-prem trust relationship. The other one was Entra ID B2B scenario. Now I will come to the sync. Okay, so let's say we have on-prem setup again, wherein you have now this is applicable. I'll ask the question to everyone how we use it. Let's say you have got your infrastructure as a service model activated, and there's an Entra ID created, or it's more common in, I'll tell you, in Office 365 scenario. You have a cloud, Microsoft Cloud, and in Microsoft we are taking something called Microsoft. We are subscribing for Microsoft 365 services. Okay, now this subscription gives you mailbox, for example. You're using the email services. You're using OneDrive. You're using SharePoint sites, different applications you're accessing. Now, first of all, what is this cloud model? What is the service model, cloud service model, which we are using here, which we are subscribing to?
SaaS.
It's a SaaS model. It's a software as a service model, right? And the moment you subscribe for it, it creates a tenant for your Entra ID. It creates a tenant, and whichever users you create on your Microsoft 365 portal, there will be an admin portal provided to you by Microsoft. And with that admin portal, you can create the users here, create users, and assign them specific licenses so that they can use specific service. Right? This is what you can do. And when you're doing this, if it is a public, you have a domain. Definitely, when you're talking about mailbox and everything, you will have your own domain name assigned to it, assigned to your organization. For example, if it is my ABC domain, it has to be a publicly registered domain. So then only I can have a user account created with this suffix abc.com, and I will be able to send and receive the emails to the other users on the internet. Right? This is a typical scenario wherein a company has only taken the SaaS service, software as a service. This is done mostly by the small and medium businesses these days, because they don't want to build the whole data center and infrastructure in order to just use these services, particular services. So rather, what they choose is they go with Microsoft 365 services or similar services, Google Workspace or Workplace or something similar. wherein they can take a specific service required for their businesses. So this is one independent business and the setup. Now, what if you already have your on-prem setup? Let's say I have my domain controller again, wherein I have the ADDS running, Active Directory Domain Services running, and this is my local domain. Here, it doesn't refer to the local, the actual domain name on the internet. We always use a local domain which is locally available to the users. So this is the domain user. I have the users created here. Let's say I already have 100 plus users and they are using the services. I have my Exchange server. So Exchange server is nothing but a mail server from Microsoft. I have a web server, for example. I have all the services. I have a complete on-prem setup wherein I have the users who are accessing these services. Now I need to extend my services to the cloud. I'm either going to migrate everything to the cloud, or I'm taking the cloud service for specific users who are always roaming or who are out of my office always, who are not sitting in the office to access these services. So what you can do is now in that scenario, for example, if you take this scenario, you have something 100 plus users here, and let's say you have some around 50 plus users on the cloud. They are both different Active Directory setups, you can say. This is the Active Directory Domain Services on-prem, and this is your Active Directory Domain Service on the cloud. And both has different set of user accounts and different level of permission and access to their resources. In in the scenario of hybrid setup, now for example, what you want to do is you want to there's one scenario wherein you want to migrate all your 100 users to the cloud, and you want to get rid of all this infrastructure what you're running on prem. So how you can do is, what is the cloud model deployment model you will use in order to migrate these resources to the cloud, these workloads? We discuss about the cloud
Everything we
models.
want to lift and shift.
No, not really. Here we are talking about the service. We're not talking about moving the servers to the cloud. So when you talk about moving your servers, I don't want any of these servers to be moved. I just want my users, which are already created here. I want to move these users to the cloud and synchronize those users. And at the end, my plan is to basically dismantle my whole on-prem setup. How you can do it? What is the cloud model you will choose to start with, and how it will work actually? So you will use the deployment model hybrid, hybrid cloud, right?
Hmm.
You will have to do a hybrid cloud setup. Now, how do you do that? In this particular scenario, to establish a hybrid cloud, I will use something called AD Connect. It was earlier called as AD Connect. Now it is called Entra Connect. It's a free utility provided by Microsoft, which you can install on any of your server in your on-prem environment. And with the help of this, what you can do is you can synchronize all these 100 users over the internet to your Entra ID. So all those 100 users will be created here. Okay, this is one thing. The first thing is you are synchronizing all the 100 users. Now, next thing is you will migrate all those 100 mailboxes from your on-prem Exchange to Microsoft 365 Exchange Online. It is called Exchange Online service, which is again under the umbrella of Microsoft 365 services. So you'll be migrating all the mailboxes. Okay, so you have a hybrid setup in this scenario. Now, in order to synchronize these users, you use a tool called AD Connect. It's the old name of Entra Connect, which is now used for synchronizing your on-prem Active Directory users to the cloud, right? Once you have all the users created here, once you have all the mailboxes migrated here and attached to these users, they are linked to all those 100 users. what you can do is you can simply get rid of your whole on-prem setup and let all users access the cloud services over the internet and access the mailbox and OneDrive and SharePoint, whatever service you want. So this is where you use something called AD Connect or Entra Connect. I'm going to the other screen. I'll just show what I was referring to. So if you see here, Microsoft Entra Connect, it's actually called Entra Connect Sync now. So they keep renaming, changing the name of the tool, which can be installed on your on-prem setup in order to synchronize your Active Directory users. And now they are going to replace that soon. It's not replaced yet with a tool called Microsoft Entra Cloud Sync. So in this scenario, you need to install this on one of your server on-prem. And with this tool, you don't have to install anything. You just have to set up this tool, which will be available on the Microsoft Cloud. So this is used for hybrid identity synchronization. So this is one scenario I have explained wherein you're migrating everything. Now there are multiple scenarios where you can use. Someone is having a question. Yes, Ahmed.
So this is same as like AD connector. So
AD
currently in
Connect.
our
It was earlier called AD Connect. It is a AD connector.
connector, okay.
Earlier, Microsoft used to call it as AD Connect.
But still we are calling as AD connector only,
No,
as
no,
I
no, no. It's
heard.
not called as AD Connect.
As
It's
long
it's
as
up
you have
to
not upgraded your AD connect.
exactly. You're not upgraded, or you have not
When you do
upgraded.
upgrade, it will change. It will rename to Entra
Yeah,
Connect.
or you have not upgraded yourself. Maybe you have
So
upgraded the
maybe we are
product,
in the
but
phase of exchange like connector. So we are in the transition of AD
no,
connectors
no,
we
no,
are
no. AD
using.
Connect is no more supported. That tool, Microsoft has
Okay.
migrated from AD Connect to Entra Connect already, and they
Okay.
recommend all the users to use Entra Connect. But
But
yes,
just
by
for
name.
your, just for one quick, so in
Hmm,
our organization, AD connectors they are using last time they faced some challenges. Is it
yes,
related to the same?
exactly the same.
Okay.
It's related to the same thing, right?
Okay.
So now this is one scenario I've explained wherein you're migrating your whole workload from on-prem to cloud, and you're getting rid of your on-prem. And there are some scenarios wherein companies still, maintain their on-prem servers and everything. In terms when it comes to some organizations, if they have to maintain some compliance related data or services which they have to run on-prem, it's mandatory for them. For example, for banks, the banks and some financial sectors, they can't really go complete cloud model. So they choose to go hybrid model, and they still run some services, and they want to manage everything from on-prem. So they don't want to give this control to Entra ID to manage their user accounts. So in that scenario, you will still have the same tool, Entra Connect, and you have multiple
And
options in that.
also, I can add one point here,
Yes,
Maksud
yes,
bhai,
go
that
ahead.
because of the compliance, they are still having the hybrid setup for AD synchronizations with Entra ID.
Exactly, exactly,
Because
exactly.
we cannot run a password policy compliance on a Entra ID
Yes, there are.
and
Yes,
the
there are
audit trail.
definitely. That's the advantage of having people who are in the field working in right now, who knows what is happening in the real time. This helps everyone in the boot camp. So we have very experienced guys here. Hari is one of my ex-colleague, and is excellent in his domain. So he knows what I'm talking about. Hybrid setup, where it is required and why it is used. There are use cases. So that's one of the use case wherein
And
organizations.
again
Yes,
thing I can blame Entra ID is they don't say anything on the upgrade. They just keep upgrading. Then if our application is not compatible with the upgrade,
exactly. That's another fact that Entra ID is completely out of our control, right? Because it's managed by Microsoft.
right.
This particular service is managed by Microsoft, and this that means they are responsible for upgrading, making sure that it is available, but they don't make sure that it is compatible. And they can't do that. It's not really practical for them to make sure that it is compatible throughout all the applications which you're running and using to authenticate to Entra ID. It is. That is the fact again, another fact, right? So this is one of the scenario I've explained where you can use where you're migrating everything on-prem to cloud. But now when people want to keep this everything on the on-prem as well, and they still want to utilize the cloud services, so they can still do that, right? So all the user accounts will be created on Active Directory still, and you can still use the same user account and password to log into cloud service as well as on-prem setup. So let's say if you have your
Maksud
on-prem
bhai,
setup,
I,
yes,
Maksud bhai, I have one question. So this hybrid model, where does
mm,
the authentication happen? It happens in the cloud or it happens on on-premises?
depends on where the user is accessing and what he's accessing, right? So
So,
if we,
so the example
yes,
what you gave, we have on-premises and then exchange services we are taking from the M365, right?
right, right.
So
I'm
for
coming to this.
all this you,
Let's see.
hmm,
Let's see this scenario again. So let's say I have the AD Connect going on here, or the Entra ID Connect. Let's refer it with the new name so everyone remembers to upgrade. And in examination you will have this name as not the AD Connect as a name. Entra ID Connect is something a tool which you're running on your server to synchronize your users to Entra ID. Now you are actually extending your services to the cloud. You're not taking something new. In the previous scenario, I've told you that the company started with the Microsoft 365 directly, and they have their user accounts created on M365. Now, in usual hybrid scenario, what will happen is you will already have your services running on-prem. You have your Exchange server when every user has the mailbox, every user has a user account created on the AD, and you're adopting Microsoft 365 services, uh, for basically for providing your email services to the remote users. This is one of the scenario. You have the remote users with R1. This user is not part of your domain. Is not. He's somewhere in some part of the world wherein he still wants to use your Exchange services. Now, in order to provide this user a mailbox in here, you can do that. You can create a user account, you can assign a mailbox, but you have to facilitate this user to connect to your Exchange server. And that can be done with the help of VPN. Right? Now you don't want to go that way. You don't have just one user. You have many. It's not just about accessing the mailbox, and you can also provide access to other services if you have a file server, if you have application server, and so on. So this is where people are using now the cloud more and more. This to make it easy the to make your services easily available and accessible to your remote users wherever they are in the world. So this is one of the scenarios wherein we have users in Active Directory. We have some users who are remote users, and we want to make use of Microsoft Cloud services. So you will take M365 subscription, you will migrate or create some users. But you want to still have a control on your AD. You want to manage this users R1 user. You want to create here in your AD, not in Entra ID. Okay, so that you have a centralized control again. You have a central control. You can apply the policies for those users and manage those users centrally from your Active Directory. So in this case, what you will do is you will sync the user accounts to Active Directory. You will not create the users here. R1 you will not create here on Entra ID directly. You will just synchronize. So whatever user you have created on your on-prem Active Directory will be created on Entra ID, and then you can assign a license and make it accessible for the user. So this user, as long as he has internet access, he can access the mailbox service. He can send and receive the emails within your organization to other users or outside your organization. So this is another scenario where you can use AD Connect for synchronizing your on-prem Active Directory users to the cloud. I hope that is clear. Let's carry on with our slides. So this is what the Entra ID was. Now moving on, what do we have here? Okay, B2B, I have explained you the scenario where it is used because now we can just run through these slides quickly. We don't have to spend time reading those things. But if there is anything important, I will highlight. So you understood the concept of B2B, right? It's basically business to business application access or the uh, authentication mechanism which you can use. B2C, we have seen how we can allow the third party validation with the users designed for conditional access. So if you have your entire Entra ID, you can you can design your Entra ID with specific conditions and actions. So conditions can be a user specific user of the group, a cloud application, device state of the device, location, which actually binds to the IP range, client application, sign-in disk, and action you can perform, allow access, enforce MFA, or you can block access. We'll have some labs to cover and understand this. Now, identity protection in Entra ID is Microsoft system that uses AI to detect, analyze, and respond to suspicious sign-ins or user activities. So, identity-based risk refers to the level of threat linked to a user or their sign-in. There are two main types: user risk and sign-in risk. What can be a user risk? User risk can be related to the leaked password. The account itself looks compromised. So this is again the Entra identity protection. It doesn't come with a free Entra ID license. You have to take P1 or P2. We have seen that. I don't remember it was for P1 or P2, but you have to take additional license in order to have this identity-based protection activated on your Entra ID. So Entra ID does this all in the background. It does check user risk and the sign-in risk. So it keeps checking the internet for the information of leaked passwords, wherein it detects a user risk and it can enforce user to reset the password, or it can also check the sign-in risk. Particular login looks suspicious. For example, login from unusual country or device or impossible travel. So this all are related things, wherein it can detect if a user, your company, your organization operates in a particular region. When Entra ID sees, because Entra ID is a cloud service, and it is available throughout the world, right? Wherever you are in the world, as long as you have access to internet, you can authenticate to your Entra ID with your domain names. Obviously, when you access user1 at abc.com from China, so your Entra ID production will automatically pick that as a sign-in risk. Looking at the location and the device also, it will be logging in from a different device, which is not your own device, right? Then you have something called access review. Access reviews are a Microsoft Entra tool to review user access and ensure they should have continued access to resources. So this is again, you can implement this, automate this. This can be a manual process, and in Entra ID you can even automate it. So you can determine the purpose of access review, engage the risk. Now you need to understand where you have to use it. We have our IAM expert Asif. He does this regularly, access reviews in our office. So he can probably give a use case where we can use access review. Asif, if you are able to speak, if you are on place
Yeah,
where you can speak, you can give an example maybe.
yeah. You'll have to. How much time will you give me?
You have time right now. You can explain, give us the scenario if you can do that.
Okay, we'll break for a prayer call.
No
Then
problem.
maybe after
What
that I
what
can
time?
explain.
Yeah, we are heading to the prayer time now. Okay, so uh, that's where we will stop now, and we'll continue after this. We have few labs on identity. What is the time now? 12:03, right? I think the prayer time is, let me see the prayer time. Okay, it's about time now. I'll take a pause for 2 minutes. Let's do one thing. Let's take a break, and we'll take half an hour break, and we'll be back by 12 5 minutes. 12. 35 or 12:40. Okay, it's a long break, but during this break, I would request if whoever can stay and complete the labs which they have done not done before. I'll be here with you on the session for next 10 minutes. You can do that. And our break starts now. If anyone has anything, you can ask me. I'm here for next 10 minutes still.